use, so you can have it on the fly rather than have to rely on sitting down for a meal. But you certainly wouldn't, big caveat is you wouldn't rely on that all the time.
Yeah.
I certainly don't recommend that, but it's great to have, as something there to give you an option, backup, and good for recovery. So when you can use them, on a daily basis, but certainly not for every meal. Got to eat food. Eat for long-term health and enjoy eating. Big one, right? If we don't enjoy what we do with food, it starts to be a slippery slope downwards. So I'll just touch on, I'm not going to go through everything in this first part of the book, just want to touch on a few key things. Over the page, I like this little graph. I've kind of stolen this one a bit actually from a textbook that I've used and to teach exercise physiology called Powers and Howard. So I'm not about to give you an exercise physiology lesson. I just want to, so don't freak out. There's a wee bit of science tonight, okay? Just a touch, because this is all science-based. But this ideally will help you understand strategy 2 on the NutriFit 5. So what we've got here is this, guys. So this is glycogen. Has anyone heard of glycogen? So let me explain that. It is a storage form of carbohydrate in your muscle and in your liver. If you look at up the top there of page 7, see how there's a diagram of a liver there, and you've got blood, you've got glucose in your blood, and so you've got muscle glycogen. So they're where you store carbohydrate in your body is in your muscle tissue and your liver. Now, if you exercise, and has anyone here heard of a Wingate test before? No, okay, that's all right. If you ever wanted to know about lactic acid, which I'm sure you've heard of that before, and that feeling of the legs burning, right? You've had that, a really rigorous workout. Well, just imagine riding a bike flat out for 30 seconds. That's a Wingate, and you know about lactic acid after that, because if you've really given it full effort, you'll struggle to get off the bike, and you'll be feeling your legs will be really heavy. Now, if you look at what happens to glycogen, in that 30 seconds it does that. Remarkable drop in just a small amount of time. So the body uses that as a fuel source very quickly, but if you back the intensity off to somewhere like about 75% of what's called VO2 max, it's a more moderate intensity, and you keep going, you can actually start to really lower your glycogen, your stores of carbohydrate, right down. Now, why I share this is for the important reason that this, if you're doing exercise that's fairly vigorous for more prolonged periods, whether it be aerobic, largely aerobic, but even resistance training, and it's maybe a combination of circuit type training, it's ongoing. The more carbohydrate you use, the more you have to replenish after. Makes sense? Doesn't it? So that now helps us understand the strategy around eat your high carbohydrate foods and sugar. You're going to have sugar mostly after exercise. Does that make sense? Just one more bit on here. If you're going out, this 30% here is literally a walk in the park. That's a stroll. And when you do that, you don't burn a lot of carbohydrate. What you burn is mostly fat, which is great. So body fat is metabolized more. The problem, and this is the major misconception, I'm sure Rach has shared this one with you, it's one that PTs get really misunderstood, is that everyone thinks, wow, that's great. Look, if I'm fat burning here and I'm not burning much carbohydrate, isn't that what I need to do? Shouldn't I come into the gym and just work out at a really easy pace and life is great? Wow, the big issue. Does anyone know what the big problem with that might be?
Time.
Correct. Well done, Lindley. Now that's 2 hours. If you really want appreciable fat burning, try checking out 3 to 4 hours. That's what you need. People don't realise that. And in gyms throughout the country, you go into any popular gym and you'll see, I don't know about 4 peaks, okay? I'm sure it'll be fine. So everything bar 4 peaks. Let's go with that, right? There is, so make sure Rachel hears that bit. There are those on cardio equipment that are just like, they're cruising along because they've been told, yep, fat burning is all about low intensity, and they're reading their books and they're watching the TV going, look at me, life's good, I'm burning this fat, isn't it great?
We don't have a TV.
We don't even have a TV,
No.
right? So maybe you might be reading a book, or you're listening to whatever you're doing, right? And they're thinking, wow, this is awesome. The problem is they're completely off track. because unless they stay on that bike for hours, the amount of fat burned is negligible. And the other major misperception that is coupled with that is they get off the bike thinking, wow, I had this great workout and I've burned all this energy, now I can go and have my chocolate bar and ice cream or cream bun, or I can have my treat because I've had a great workout. And what they don't realise is this: they've actually burnt far less energy than they think, so they've completely overestimated their energy expenditure and they underestimate the amount of energy they're consuming. So what do you think happens for most gym goers in New Zealand every day?
Eating lots of.
They don't get anywhere. They don't get their results. Gyms love it. And gym owners, maybe Rachel has this happening, I don't know. Gym owners love it because the customers come back because they're not getting results, thinking, what's going on? You know, I should be getting some progress. So here's the message, guys. And I'm not suggesting that you go really hardcore, but the harder you work, yes, you'll burn more glycogen, but guess what? You also burn body fat, even at high intensity. So my recommendation for you is do keep the quality of your workouts high, and when you do that, here's the even better thing. The harder you work, the more, for a longer period of time, the more carbohydrate you can consume. So you can have your treats. You've got to earn your carbs though. Right? Got to earn them. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I've spent just a wee bit of time on that, but I think it's quite an important illustration. It kind of really illustrates a number of key concepts. This one we're going to talk about a bit more, but dehydration. How many of you have been dehydrated here before? Know what that's like? Yep. I'll put my hand up for sure. It's not pleasant. What are some of the symptoms?
Vomiting.
Oh, yep. That's getting more into the cerebral.
Right.
Yeah.
Had something to drink.
Okay. Oh, yep. Body just rejects it. Headaches? Common. Tiredness. Dry mouth. Yeah, that's, you know, when that's out, things are getting pretty dry. Do you know that most New Zealanders walk around every day dehydrated? Just have no idea. And not only is it detrimental to performance, because look at this, your exercise capacity drops 30% when you're dehydrated by about 5% body weight, and that's, let's say for like a 70 kilogram individual, that's around about 3.5 kilograms. Now, it may sound a lot, but if you're doing like a spin class or you're really working out hard, you can sweat. You could potentially, I would admit, it'll probably be more males than females because males sweat more than females, but you could lose that in an hour, and it's going to have a marked effect on your performance, right? But here's the good news, that basically we don't have to, if we just start to focus on fluids and make sure that we're doing, you know, it's a simple thing by having access to water can be a good thing, or sports drink, will overcome that, and we'll actually take that issue out of the picture. And it's one of the big things you need to be focusing on with your exercise is hydration.
So do you sort of put it in before you start?
Yeah.
And
well, yes, you can do that, but it's more around having something. And we talked about this last week, that some glucose immediately before you exercise, depending on again gender, can be a useful thing. So a little bit of fluid coming in, but you don't have to certainly go overboard, because too much fluid in your gut doesn't go well either. Anyone had that problem with, say, the stitch?
Yeah.
Too much fluid, because you imagine, this is what it's like.
So is that what causes the stitch?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Imagine this is your stomach, okay? And that you drink a lot of fluid, so you fill it up so it's fairly full, and so it's just like, imagine that jiggling around, that's your stomach, and you go for a run. And what it's doing, all the connective tissue and ligaments supporting that stomach in your abdominal cavity stretch. So yeah, that's the stitch. That's one of the theories anyway, that gives you that burn and that really discomfort. So you've got to be careful about how much fluid you have immediately before, but it's mainly what you do during is hard as well. Yeah. So we've got to be careful about. We definitely need to be thinking about fluids, so we prevent dehydration, and it's one of the worst enemies in terms of exercising. Yeah? Now here's just a little bit on fluids, and we're going to come back to that when we talk about workout nutrition. Has anyone here actually been through the exercise of determining their sweat rate? Okay. Have you ever heard of that being done before? No, not many have. So this might not apply to you all, but if you're doing, is anyone here doing sort of more aerobic exercise where you're going sort of over an hour in duration? Is anyone sort of up to that sort of thing? Since you're doing that on the bike?
Mountain bike, yeah.
Mountain bike, yeah. So maybe for yourself, one thing to consider, and it's just useful to know, like maybe even for
boys,
yeah,
and maybe
Tristan,
occasionally.
for his biking, right?
Mm.
He'll be definitely share this one with him. That if you want to really get a gauge on what your sweat rate is, so then you know how much to replace. So for yourself, it's pretty easy. You want to ideally do it for a half hour or an hour, but you've got to, if not, work it out on a per hour basis. And you simply just take your weight before and your weight after. And if it's 30 minutes here, then you've got to multiply by 2 to get per hour. But let's say with this example, we've lost 300 grams, and 1 kilogram of body weight loss is basically the same as 1 litre of fluid. Now, that's an assumption, and it's the thing that will affect that is, of course, glycogen fat loss, which is fairly negligible over an hour. Okay, so it's a pretty strong relationship, good enough for what we're going to work with. Okay, to be exact here. And then if we take that 0.3 kilograms and we've had some fluid during, so if you do this test, you don't have to not have fluid. You can drink, you just have to know how much. So if you're going to use a drink bottle, just measure before and after.
Have we got that in here?
Yes, you have. Sorry, that's is
Oh yes, here it is.
page
13.
Yeah.
Thank you. Page 13. Just flicking through this one here. Then add your drink consumed to the amount of weight lost, and then you come up with your 500 mils. Multiply that by 2 because this is for 30 minutes, and that's 1,000 mils per hour. Which, by